What's up, guys? I'm Kurania, and I'm going back undercover on my alt account, TNT Gashamer, where I will every week go through my activity logs at a random time, look at some games, and pick some games to review, and do some guest shaming, give my notes on how they can improve on the rounds. This week I've decided to set up a spreadsheet where I can take notes. I'll put timestamps in here later, so you can skip to which section you want. This spreadsheet will be in the description of the video, and yeah, let's get into the guest shaming. Let's start with this game by Catawg. I like that username, like a cat and a dog. Their first round they get the one correct, but then they send Minsk, Belarus on Russia. I'm not sure if they're hedging for Ukraine, if they think Minsk is Google coverage, but number one most important thing, Minsk does not have Google coverage other than a single tracker in the city center. But you can know this because it has a tracker car and it's on walking streets. But vast majority of the time you're going to be in Russia because, as you can tell by these orange lines, is significantly more Google coverage. And here's the location he had. Also, good tips for Russia for a beginner trying to identify them is they do not use blue strips on their plates, unlike the rest of Europe. So if you see all the plates missing blue strips, it's a good hint you'll probably be in Russia if you're in Europe. Ukraine has a Ukraine flag on the left of their plate, but in Russia they use nothing. Yeah, also obviously in Russia they only use Cyrillic language, so it's not going to be any of these Balkan countries where they use a mix of Cyrillic and Latin. Okay, that's the first round done. Let's head into the second one. This is in Saskatchewan, Canada. He got Canada correct, but he sent Northern Quebec. Also another example of maybe a bit better knowledge of Google coverage can help you out. So in the north of Quebec and Ontario, and most of Canada, you don't get much Google coverage. But for this location, there are a few ways you can get Saskatchewan. I feel like for a beginner, just when you see a very open green landscape in North America, this is probably going to be somewhere in the plains in the central region. And if it's like northern and cold and the trees are skinny and there's not many trees, plains of Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. Very good place to guess. Another meta we have here is what we call a Saskatchewan road line, where they have these little white dashes randomly placed on the yellow road lines. That is by far the most common in Saskatchewan, quite common in Saskatchewan. You see it a little bit in British Columbia, but there's a much different landscape usually. More metas here if you're playing moving. This is a Saskatchewan sign for a Saskatchewan white road, and if you keep moving, there's another handy meta, which is a Saskatchewan signpost, which is a white triangle. So lots of different metas here. If you're able to move, that are just handy to spot Saskatchewan that some people watching might not know. Okay, moving to round 3. This one is in Romania, I believe. He sent Czech-Slovak border. So first tip, I would say, holy poles are in Romania, Hungary, and Poland. And in Romania, they use a lot of white and yellow paint on the base of their poles, and they're generally bigger and thicker than the other countries. Also, if you move down the road, you can see some language, and probably the easiest language tip for Romania, if I can find it, there's one. So that's a Romanian exclusive letter. The language is it's a Romance language, I believe. Yeah, that's the word. Like Spanish or Italian. So it's pretty different linguistically to surrounding countries in the way they structure their words. It's kind of like the combination between Turkish and Italian in my head. Also, last tip for Romania to identify it: gate spam slash wall spam, where they almost every property will have like a wall blocking it from the road with a gated entrance, like spaced out from the house. That's very Romanian. They do similar-ish stuff in Hungary, but it's, yeah, very Romanian to do it in like every house on every street in the country. Yeah, lots of different tips I could give you for this one. Round 4. Oh, this one is in Perth, my home city. Okay. Yeah, if you're in Australia, in a city, always make sure to check your signposts, because they're using yellow signposts. You're in West Australia, and yeah, the majority of signposts in West Australia are yellow, and they're not used anywhere else in the country. So that should be an instant hint that you're in Perth. Also, blue license plates. We use blue on the top of our license plates. We're the only state that does that. It's really easy to spot. And finally, flat curbs. You can see these curbs are like flat and they kind of transition to the road, so that water drains a bit more naturally, I guess. That is most common in Perth. It's not 100% reliable. I'd say about 70% Perth, 30% elsewhere in the East Coast somewhere. But if you're in a major city and it feels like Perth, it is a good way to confirm it. It's in the UK. Yes, he sends Western Germany on the UK. So looking at it here. So for beginners, it is a very good tip for telling the driving side of the road, because UK and Ireland drive on the left and the rest of Europe drives on the right side of the road. So if you see a sign and it's on the left side of the road, that means your country is most likely driving on the left. In a country that drives on the right, this sign would be placed on the right side of the road. So it's like, if you're driving forward, it's on the same side of the road that you're driving on. So you can see it easier. Also, UK bollards over here. It's like a black and white design with a pretty thick bollard, unique to the UK. Yeah, red reflect on the other side. And a bit more of an advanced tip that I don't expect too many new players to be using is these rumble strips. Not rumble strips, RPMs, raised pavement markers. They are in Europe. They are by far the most common in the UK, and they're very, very commonly used in between like long dashes with a short gap with an RPM and then another long dash. That's a very UK road line. And yeah, with these long dashes, which are very common like UK, France, sometimes Denmark, sometimes Portugal. If you see an RPM, you can be confident it's the UK. Yeah, good advice for this one. And also, obviously, UK uses yellow plates on the back and white on the front. Okay. Heading into a new player now. We're analyzing Jordi. First round will be in Rajasthan. He's sending Central India. Not the easiest round for region guessing, but in my opinion, this very sandstone heavy architecture, very indicative of a very dry climate, which makes sense for central Rajasthan. And you can see, yeah, they got like whitish stone houses, I guess, around the place. Not white, like pink, I don't know. But the color of this architecture very indicative of Rajasthan to me. And yeah, the language I think is just Hindi, so the language is very ambiguous for a lot of the country. So yeah, gotta try use landscape and vegetation to do your region guess. But yeah, this is a bit difficult to tell because you can't really see the trees very closely. Rajasthan also has a very low use of English compared to most of India, so that can be helpful, although it's not obviously the only region that does that. But I feel like it's a bit more Western to see no English than it is Eastern. Yeah. Next round we head to looks like Ukraine. So he sent Russia on Ukraine. His opponent's in Montenegro, but yeah, Russia is a fair guess here on landscape. you can't really see the plates well enough to make out the country. Make out whether it's Russian or Ukrainian with the Ukrainian flag. You can't really tell. Almost looks more Russian. That's fair enough. One thing I'd say here is this is red car long antenna. It's obviously very difficult to tell in the shadow. If you can't see the car with the long antenna, it's much more common in Ukraine. Like the black back on Russia is usually a lot more obvious. There's rare frames where it is blurred, but if essentially if you just see the antenna, that's about 80% Ukraine, I'd say, in the 50-50. Also these trees, which are tall, skinny looking trees where the branches go up, they're called poplars. When I see them urban, I think a lot more Ukraine than Russia. Also red brick industrial architecture, a lot more Ukrainian to me. In Russia, it's very west, but like it's just more common in Ukraine. As well as this June summer coverage, very typical of Ukraine. Russia has a lot more variation with its seasonal coverage as a general matter, but yeah, not an easy round to tell there at round 8. This is Romania now. Yeah, so definitely a baby round with the wineries making most people think more Western Europe. But to get the vibe here, there's a few reasons why, yeah, like Po Valley doesn't really make sense, France doesn't really make sense. I'd say you do have this black backer sign, which means, yeah, Romania, Italy, or Albania, most common. Occasionally you've seen in Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg, but Italy, Albania, Romania is the most common. I would say the reason this isn't Italy is just the topography doesn't really make sense for anywhere in Italy. The Alps kind of start out of nowhere, and yeah, they go very big, very fast. It's not very gradual at any point really in the Alps. You can see how just quickly they jut out on the map. And no other region of Italy really has this like transition uphills, if that makes sense, into such a flat valley. Like, it makes perfect sense for Romania if you realize it. Also, just a general sense of the vegetation, very like twiggy, bushy, Eastern European type plants, and like you see like this red roof looks very Eastern European, Romanian to me. Like they use sheet metal and red roofs like that very often, like more sheet metal over here. This architecture, yeah, pretty good for telling East from West Europe. You see sheet metal roofs, you're probably more near the Carpathian Mountains. Yeah, just my general tips for that. Not an easy round. And round 9, this one is in Chattogram. It's I believe his opponent got the region, and good thing for Bangladesh. Obviously, for people who can't read Bengali like you or me, it's not very intuitive to try and read text, but Bangladesh very often has addresses with like commas separating the information. And so if you read the last thing at the end of a sequence of commas, you'll often see info such as this one saying Chattogram, and yeah, his opponent read the info and pulled off a good guess. So it's always good to check just in case. When you're playing no moving, it's worth just spending a couple of seconds because yeah, otherwise your opponent might read it and you won't. Last guess from Jordi is in Ontario. Jordi is hedging Quebec, which is not bad for the skill level, but a couple of reasons why it's in Quebec. We have Peel Street, which is English. We have this Canadian chevron. But in Quebec, they actually use like a normal American chevron, like the inside of this, if that makes sense. They don't have the checkerboard on the outside in Quebec. That is unique in Canada. Everywhere else in Canada uses checkerboard, and in America they don't use a checkerboard. So Quebec's the same as America. But obviously, yeah, you have English and the chevron, so you know you're not in Quebec. And he could be hedging for New Brunswick, but I think this architecture looks a lot more Ontario, as well as the wind farm, a lot more Ontario. But these like low brick houses, they're a bit more wide and spacious, and I'll compare it to a New Brunswick over here. This is more Eastern architecture. These are these multi-story white houses with these triangle roofs. These very I guess standardized style of windows. I think it's called Atlantic architecture. It's very identifiable type vibe of a more coastal eastern look to it. But yeah, it's a reasonable guess. Okay, moving on to SwordSlicer. Him and his teammate both sent Thailand or Bangladesh. Oops. So the reason this is Bangladesh and not Thailand, number one hint I would say is the poles. In Thailand they use square poles with dots going down them. I guess I can quickly grab an example because it is very common. Here you go. So they have dots down and it's square. They spam it all across the country. It's a very unique pole, very identifiable. In Bangladesh they use round poles, and they also use a lot of sheet metal architecture. So yeah, even the walls here sheet metal as well as the roofs. Yeah, more so than anywhere else in Asia really. This is very Bangladeshi architecture, and the country is covered with these yellow rice fields. Even more so than Thailand. Thailand has them somewhat, but Bangladesh you'll almost always see them. This species of palm also quite common in Bangladesh and not really in Thailand. Yeah, that's all I have for that one. Moving on to round 12. This is in Newfoundland. It's an understandable mistake. I believe they sent Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And this one is, of course, in South Dildo. And really, to get Newfie here, I would say, yeah, you should learn this vegetation on these very like northern-looking trees with not too many branches going up the stem of the trees. Like example like this looks super north. And they have lots of these grey dirt roads with this style of vegetation that you don't really see in Nova Scotia. I forgot to grab a comparison before, but oops. Nova Scotia dirt road looks a bit more like this. The trees are a bit more southern, a bit different looking, more denser pines across the entire tree. But yeah, that's a reasonable mistake. Let's go into round 13. We're in Western Kazakhstan, and everyone in the lobby is going central. So Kazakhstan desert rounds generally are in the west. There's a very dry looking road like here. That looks like the desert. That can go down south, I believe. But yeah, most of the time dry looking rounds are going to be more west. It's kind of a progressive thing over in the north, and yeah, it's a bit of a transitional climate from like a semi-dry climate up here with a bit more grass to like a desert down here on this road. But yeah, both teams in that game were hedging around here, and there is some Beatty looks here, but this is a very niche coverage. This dry looking coverage, and it's very red, somewhat distinctive, and yeah, I wouldn't be worried about it if I'm a newer player. But yeah, this road is yeah, a bit of a thing you gotta be watching out for because yeah, I think the dryness is a hint for more west, and hedging this central, like if around Astana Karaganda, you're gonna be getting some trees in the summer coverage, and it's like winter coverage south of Karaganda, and this is very distinct. So this region of the country is winter, so you can like rule out that region. Yeah, round 14. This is in Texas. Yeah, so the other team correctly getting the part of Texas, and your team between Oklahoma and Eastern Texas. I would say the topography here is really helpful. So these like hills, these bigger hills are definitely indicative of this type of range of Texas, as well as these trees. These are more plainsy trees, like they're not like southern pines. They're uh, very Texas trees. You know, they're very common around San Antonio. Here's some Gen 1, but you see these trees. Um, yeah, so like your teammate who's in Eastern Texas, you know, that's a lot more southern pines, whereas this climate where you get these hills has a lot more of these lower Texas trees that I don't know the name of. Um, and yeah, with the salt and pepper pavement and these trees, can be pretty confident in Texas. Um, and yeah, that region of Texas particularly, this like hill country, I believe it's called. We just always get hills. Round 15. This one is, I believe, from LittleFox. And he sends Java on South Sumatra. So in this round, you see a lot of rubber trees. Now, rubber trees are a really important tree to be using in Indonesia because on a super rural round like this, it's kind of all you get. And they peak in density in South Sumatra. So yeah, most common South Sumatra Lampung, and then you get pockets of them on East Java, and Kalimantan, rarely on Sulawesi. But yeah, mostly Sumatra, spread around Cali. But yeah, in this density, I would not expect Cali and Java be very unusual because it's yeah across the entire road and the hilly round like this. Um, Also, these pole tops, you see how they're slightly off center, so like almost symmetrical but slightly off center. Um, the bar and a weird angle, but yeah, the center's slightly off. That to me is very South Sumatra Lampung. Um, yeah, and you wouldn't be seeing that in Java. Like Java, these are either completely off center, these are clearly on center, these are clearly on center with sometimes off center, but they'll look like East Java. Like this doesn't look anything like the East Java to me. You see similar things sometimes in Sulawesi or sometimes in Nusa, but it's most common South Sumatra Lampung, and it's a good thing to rule out Java if you see a slightly off center pole top in Indonesia. Okay, round 16. This one is in Komi. I believe, yeah, LittleFox sends Murmansk. The opponents in Kanti, so Kanti and Yamalo, these two states that this guy's kind of hedging for are both all red car, so it doesn't really make sense. But obviously it's a very northern looking round. And he's sending Murmansk, which can look similar. I forgot to grab locations, but yeah, they look like this. And yeah, you can see how like they have this. I'm not even sure you call these shrubs. These very Scandinavian looking shrubs on the ground, like Scandinavian highlands. Um, that's very common in Murmansk, and you see a little bit of it in this location, which kind of baits for Murmansk. But I would say the main difference here is the road quality and the soil color. Murmansk usually has relatively uh, uh, distinct, I guess, generic soil. Uh, More skinny roads with more birches and more skinny northern Scandinavian trees. There's like a very distinct road over here with fed soil. Whereas this like wide, a bit grayer soil, I would say is a bit more uh, Archangelsk Komi, and Northern Komi does have these roads that have similar vegetation to Murmansk, and you gotta be careful. I would say, yeah, I think with enough practice you can get the vibe that you're not really seeing dense birches or dense pines here. You know, a lot of shorter birches. Yeah, that's my advice for that location. Okay, round 10, Germany. So he's in Poland. His opponent's in Czechia. Um, Here's the location. It's quite a difficult Germany. There's no meadows. There's just 23 copyright, which is much more common in Germany. Germany will always be 23 or 24. Poland, vast majority of the time, is 22, with rare exceptions of 23 and 24. I'd say over 90% 2022. So the copyright is definitely useful. Also just the skinniness of the road, and on a paved road especially, is quite German. I think it's a little bit Czech, but I'd say German more than Czechia and Poland. I grabbed a aesthetic of a van in Poland road, and yeah, it's usually a lot wider. It's quite rare that you get skinny roads like this, and yeah, like especially like in hills, this aesthetic much more German than Polish to me. Um, and even something like Denmark is probably closer to Poland in terms of vibes on a road like this. Yeah, that's my advice for that one. Not an easy round. And we have this Kazakhstan, which was on round 11, and you can see using my script, I can see they both took 2 minutes here, and I watched back the replay because I was curious because of LittleFox's guess, and he was scanning this road for 2 minutes, and then he ended up giving up and sending in this region. Um, so this road is not typically divided, but this random location has uh, the the road divided and going through these mountains, but on your normal map you don't really see the mountains very well. It's hard to find. Um, and yeah, this is unmapped, so it's a bit baity if you're trying to scan for it. But I'd say to compare to where LittleFox sent, which was near Sayozek, um, over here. Uh, very, very, very wintry coverage. This entire road is peak winter coverage in uh, April or March. Very, very cold looking, dry time of year. Um, and yeah, you get a lot of snow. You get these dead trees. And yeah, it doesn't look like the desert. And this is during the summer in the desert. So understanding seasonal coverage and the climate, and you get sandstone here. It's more common in the west of the country, particularly in these regions. Um, and yeah, these like shrubs, like this region. Um, I describe it as it looks a bit like guitar, um, in terms of dryness and aesthetic. And yeah, that you get mountains on this road. Um, oh, my cat's walking my keyboard. Um, yeah, and yeah, you get mountains along this road. It's good to know. Topography here, most of the desert in the west is flat, so if you see these mountains, it's basically always going to be this road. Yeah. So moving on to round 19, which is in this game. This one is in Nevada. Uh, very good meta here. These are called bots dots. Um, and they are these two yellow circles that similar to raised pavement markers, but they're circles, and they're very common in Vegas particularly, and in Nevada and California. But yeah, they're Nevada, California meta. So yeah, if you're thinking a general Southwest US climate and you see these, make sure you're going Nevada or California or hedging for them. Probably LittleFox's opponent is probably hedging for them, but yeah, they're very common near Las Vegas, and they're also seen in California, uh, so not Arizona on that one. Round 20, we have another Nevada. Nevada is a state with not dense coverage, so it's good to be able to cook Nevada rounds. So he's sending South Nevada near Las Vegas, but this is in northwestern Nevada, so this is in northwestern Nevada, so the climate's a lot different. So I mean, you can literally compare it to the last location, see how red the soil is, see how much green shrubs you get. This is a lot drier, a lot deeper towards Arizona, where you get these red mountains that look like the Grand Canyon or Moab or something. Whereas Northern Nevada, you get more gradual mountains, um, and they're a lot grayer. So this is salt brush, very common in this region of the US. And yeah, it's basically the only plant you'll get out here. And you'll get salt flats, so this is exposed salt. from water degradation. So yeah, both these things are most common in the northern Nevada in this type of climate, rather than the south. Okay, round 7. This one is a very minor thing. We are in South Australia. He's on Eyre Peninsula. His opponent's east of Adelaide. So this location, it's on the National Highway A1. And the thing about the A1 is it's the biggest highway in the world. And this section in South Australia, I think, is relatively identifiable. Combination of road angle and these rumble strips and the climate making sense for this general region on the Eyre Peninsula, but it's an identifiable road. There's not too many paved roads, and usually paved roads in South Australia, they don't have these lines on the side. There is one road I found over here, but it looks a lot different, doesn't have the same angle. This angle is relatively consistent, it's relatively identifiable. And yeah, they normally look like that. Now 22 left. I think we're on Treezerik's game now. Last play of the video. And we are on round 2 in Connecticut. So this round is in Connecticut, is in some winter coverage, which is always more difficult than summer to reaching guests generally. And number one thing here is it says con dot, which is short for Connecticut. Always good to scan for info, see if you can make any connection like that. Not a completely reliable meta, but I see bollards spread across this road. Bollards are more common in the northeast than they are in the south of Appalachia. It's not completely reliable, but can help you. I spoke to an American. He said expressway is generally a northeastern term, very common in like New York, New Jersey, and in the northeast. They would normally say freeway. I don't have any math for that or any basis, any evidence for it, but I think if you see a sign saying expressway, you're probably in the northeast. And also, yeah, the use of fronts, but you can't quite tell in this frame. But yeah, every plate is a front license plate. And lastly, the climate and vegetation. These skinny northeastern trees. You can kind of get a sense those are like, yeah, northern pines, which are evergreen. The vegetation here in the summer looks like this. A lot different, but yeah, these are northeastern trees, and you can kind of sense it a lot better in the summer. And for comparison, here's Tennessee, because both teams are hedging southern Appalachia. Here's kind of how trees in Tennessee look. It's somewhat similar, but they're like taller because these will probably be taller pines and very lush during the summer. So in the winter here you get dead shrubs from the vines. So somewhat subtle, telling the difference. And also looking for coverage, there's very little winter divided highways in West Virginia, like where they're plonking. So it kind of has to be either side because it's not a very populated area, central Appalachia. Yeah, so last round of the video, we have the guest in the thumbnail, I believe is in central Ukraine, and both teams are committing west. As you can see, it's very overcast and very hilly, something that you can see in the very west of the country. But I guess main thing here is the topography here, a lot more rolling hills, and yeah, there's the hills east. You get hills near large rivers, just generally as a topographical thing everywhere in the world. And on the Dnieper River is no different. You get plenty of hills near it. And I would say in the Max West, hills are generally more ridgy. You'll always be seeing big ridges, and architecture is usually a lot more distinct. So you have houses like this that look very Western to me with these pink slated roofs. And yeah, this architecture looks just a lot more European. Hard to put into words, but this looks very European, painted houses and like yeah, a lot more colorful houses, I guess, and uh, standard European roofs rather than like the normal black and metal roofs that you get in most of Ukraine that you like can't see here, like grey roofs, and a lot of brick buildings, very generic. Yeah, not colorful at all. Also, for the nerdy coverage thing, this is B-type overcast in the Carpathian Mountains. You get A-type overcast. It comes in through the west side, and you get B-type that is not overcast. It comes in through the east side. It comes like out through this road. But yeah, so you get A-type on the west of the mountains and B-type like going through it like that. And that's not overcast. If you B-type overcast is sometimes Lviv, but Lviv generally isn't as hilly. And with B-type overcast, B-type meaning antenna with the top notch on the left, and this location with overcast has the top notch on the right. With B-type, you're generally either near Lviv or a lot of the center of the country to the west of the Volga River. B-type overcast is somewhat common in this region. Yeah, that's the last round of the video. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you're interested in personalized private coaching, feel free to reach out to me on Fiverr or Discord. And a link to that will be in the description. And yeah, thanks for watching.